here, which is my husband, Benny Burnell, and another kind of host here with us, Michelle Martinez in the office. And then, of course, we have our tech guy here, Luis Santana.
The man.
That makes it all possible.
Right, he does. You know, this technical stuff gets pretty technical.
Yeah.
So we have a great show. We have so much going on, right? Everything's going on. We got a war going on. We got bills being passed. We have so much happening right now. But one of the things that we wanted to kind of do, because there's so much going on with the immigration and you know, I think we're trying to get more educated, right? We want people to understand how the process is being worked. I want to understand it better. So, you know, we decided to, you know, kind of focus on that for the first, we're going to have a 2-hour show, by the way. So the first hour is going to be kind of focused on the immigration and just kind of, you know, going over that. We have a guest calling in, Victor Avila. And as soon as he calls in, we'll put him through.
Our good buddy Victor Avila from Texas. If you don't know his story, you know, he's a former ICE agent as well. He's an author as well. If you remember, there was an incident in the borders where they killed one of an ICE agent, and they tried to take his life as well. And thank God, you know, he survived, and he's out there still working with the administration. And this is his kind of his specialty, you know. So he's going to break it all down for us, because I think one of the things right now that's going on, and I think we all agree, is you know, the opposition is using fear. You know, they lie. You know, it's a fake media, like, you know, President Trump always says, which is true. You know, so we asked Victor. We brought him on about 2 months ago because we knew that this was going to be a big issue for all of us. Immigration was it. And the reason why I say that is because when the woke agenda that they put all their ducks in, they pretty much thought this is it. We're going to win this. When they failed in that area, they had to find another issue. And that issue was immigration. So, you know, Victor's going to be calling in from Texas. And before we move forward, I would like to give a shout out to my big brother Jaime and Lisa Bernal out there in Texas. I know you guys are listening. You said you're going to be listening. Give you a little shout out, brother. Thank you for listening up. And so, Michelle, you know, once we get the show going, it's going to be great.
Thank goodness. Yeah. I mean, I think that there isn't a better time to be, especially conservatives, to be getting involved in this communication, because I understand that it's really difficult to talk about this stuff, but who better than a conservative who has compassion and love for their fellow man to be talking about this, and not just trying to appease individuals, but to really look at it from a place of love and compassion and to have the hard conversation. Somebody has to be the adult in the room, because the Democrats are so good at manipulating our feelings.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
So we have to bring that sober conversation into it. And I think, you know, thank God we have Victor Avila who's joining us tonight. And the conversation is that it's not that we don't care.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, have you, you know, you've ever seen those stories about the parents who are dealing with their children who might have fallen and, you know, they either come home with an addiction or something, and there's always that painful time.
Yes.
Do you just keep feeding them their addiction, or do you watch them go through that detox that is so tragic?
Yes.
I mean, it's so tragic to watch your child have to, you know, go through that, but you stand strong.
Yes.
And you let that painful moment subside, because you know it's only for a moment.
While
and
you're
then
holding
we
their
can
hand.
have reformation. We want that reformation, right?
Yeah.
But it has to start with the heavy lifting, which, you know, I'm so thankful for our president and what he's been doing, and to get a different perspective, because it's not that we don't care. It's not that we don't love these individuals. And I mean, my heart wrenches, you know, the stories I've heard, but you know, part of that conversation has to be sober-minded.
Well, it needs to be, and I think it's important for all of us. I mean, everyone in this room here, I know I'm second generation, you know, American of Mexican descent, you know, but you know, we represent 6 generations. We have so many people that are pretty much caught in the middle, especially our family and friends who are waiting in line. So I think our guest is in. Is Victor? Are you there, Victor?
I'm here. Guys, how you doing?
Hi, Victor. Hi, Victor. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for calling in. We know so much is happening, and, you know, I don't know how busy you are with any of this, but, you know, I know our audience right now, I mean, you know, we have a lot of family and friends. They're divided on this issue. And, I think a lot of it is we want clarity. We want to understand the process of what's happening. And I know, you have this experience from past administration and you've been through so much yourself with, would you just give kind of a quick little story about your backstory? Because you've been here on the show before, and I know you've said it before, but a lot of people haven't heard that story. Could you just kind of give a quick little rundown on that?
Sure. I'm a retired special agent with ICE and Homeland Security Investigations. I'm born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and worked most of my career on the border. Obviously, I served in Mexico, Central America, and Europe. A lot of people obviously know what I went through on February 15th of 2011, where my partner and I, Special Agent Jaime Zapata, were ambushed by Los Zetas cartel. Agent Zapata tragically lost his life, and I survived by the grace of God after being shot 3 times. And so I've kept up, after my retirement in 2015, I've kept up with the border on a daily basis with friends and colleagues and sources here and in abroad, just sharing information as to what's going on and what a lot of the politics involved. As you can't separate the politics from the issue.
Yes.
And this is the immigration issue commingled with the cartel issue, with the border issue, with so many other things that we've seen in the last several years, especially the last 5 years. It's just been incredible.
Yes.
No one, not me, not anybody, had witnessed what we witnessed. And actually what we're doing and seeing now, a lot of people are very surprised, and you see these protests and you see all these things happening, and all that's happening is law enforcement. But because they didn't see law enforcement happen like that, people think that it's illegal. People ask them some of the most weirdest things that I just think is mind-boggling to me. They don't think that ICE agents and HSI special agents have arrest powers, or they don't see them as a law enforcement entity, but they're just like any other law enforcement entity with a lot of authorities, especially when the merger happened between INS, remember back then, Immigration and Naturalization Service, with the U.S. Customs Service. My goodness, this is one of the agencies that has probably the most authorities under their belt because of that merger. Sometimes more than FBI, more than DEA, more than other, 3-letter agencies out there. And to me, it's very surprising that because of the political rhetoric surrounding the word immigration, somehow they accuse the ICE agents of kidnapping. I'm seeing incredible. Why are they not wearing a uniform? Why are they driving unmarked cars? Very, very ridiculous things to me, because I did that every day in my career. But because they got used to, I think, this is my opinion, in the last 4 years, they didn't see this kind of enforcement. And now that they're seeing it, and of course we're seeing it a lot because everybody has a phone, the news is out there. Now they've opened up to the media. Biden shut down the media. Biden, it was very few news outlets that were actually reporting what was happening at the border. And he gave full access to the media to go see what Border Patrol does, go see what ICE does, go see what other agencies are doing. And all of a sudden you have this boom effect, and it seems like people, they're gonna come take us all. No, they're not. They're just doing their job. And guess what? They're following the law that should have been followed all along.
Exactly.
But it hadn't been.
Victor,
and here we are.
Let me ask you this, because I guess the numbers are between 15 and 20 million illegals that have come into the border in the last 4 years through the Biden-Harris administration. Some people say that it's even way more than that, because those are the ones that they were able to count. So it's probably could be 25 million people. So that's a lot of people. That puts a lot of pressure on a country, on a state. And I think a lot of people, they're so emotional about it, but they're not looking at that part. But one of the biggest questions I have for you, more than anything else, I don't know if you were there during the Obama administration. Were you there at that time?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I worked
so
under the Obama administration
what
also.
what is the difference? Tell me this, because I know one of the differences is going to be obviously social media. People are much more on social media. People are using their cameras a lot more. But what was the difference? Because when Obama did it, he did it like stealth. Nobody knew anything until like now. People are talking about it because they're comparing it. But back then, nobody knew because he deported more illegals. They say between 3 and 5 million people. He deported. He
correct.
deported more than any other president in U.S. history. And for some reason, there was no rioting. There was no media covering any of this. No protesting. No anything. Like it was dead silent. And so he was able to do it like a stealth. And I don't know if it was just because the media was not covering it because they covered like what they did with Joe Biden. They covered Joe Biden's health. They covered the Hunter laptop and so on and so on. They covered all four. The Democratic and their their party, everything that was going on. What was the difference on the way the Obama administration handled it compared to the way Trump is handling it now?
It's a great question. I get this a lot because you're absolutely 100% correct on those numbers, on deportation numbers under Obama. But things started changing under Obama, and it's not really that it was stealth. I mean, we were doing, but you're right. It was the media. The media didn't report it because the media has always been on the left side of the equation here, on the left side of politics. So nobody really cared, but there was a lot of deportations. He's the one that started putting the kids in cages,
Right.
and people somehow that narrative jumped over to Trump, like it was Trump that did it, and that's absolutely not true. I tell you because I worked there. Obama's the number one separator of families, which, by the way, you have to, because in law enforcement, that's the way it works.
Right.
When you arrest somebody, you have to separate families. That's the way it is.
Yes.
But again, that's when the rhetoric started. But it was there was no stealth about it. I'll tell you what did change, and I have a story to tell you because Obama is when it was towards the middle of I think that at the end, his first term was very different than the second term. In his second term, he then started changing policy, immigration policy, not law, and he started inventing things like DACA. It's an invention of the Obama administration. It's not constitutional. They drafted it up and they just made it a policy. The other one was, I remember when the word came down that we couldn't arrest any illegal alien between the age of 16 and 28, something like that. And I'm like, well, that's the majority of illegals that we're looking for.
Right.
And he also then implemented this is where the first sanctuary city policies started coming on board, and locations. You couldn't arrest anybody at a courthouse, at a church, at a school, at a hospital. And so then all these places became safe havens for illegals. Mm-hmm. I remember I was ordered to stand down. I was about to arrest an illegal alien drug dealer, mid-level drug dealer, at a school in El Paso. And I was outside ready to go get him, and they said, stand down because you're at a school. And that personally affected all the way down to the field level. So that's when it started, but it was towards his second term that the policy started changing, and the atmosphere on immigration started changing. But you're right, the deportations never stopped. I mean, there were flights going out. I mean, he was averaging about 1,500 illegals a day.
Wow.
Right now, Trump is averaging about 500 to 600 a day.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
that should people don't want to hear that part of it for some reason. By the way, Bill Clinton, I worked under Clinton. He also deported a lot of people, and Bush as well.
Yeah. You bring up a really great point, which is today the Democrats are trying to make it seem like, it's the caregivers that are, we've got to, our bleeding hearts are for the caregivers. But the real threat, and we haven't really, touched base on this, is the cartels, right? Like California ICE raids are being protested. And the truth is, they've removed convicted murderers, rapists, child sexual assaulters, and trafficking. But let me ask you this question. What are we missing as a country when sanctuary cities are prioritizing their feelings over facts? Are Democrat-led policies allowing cartels to operate freely in our cities? What do you think's going on here?
So when it comes to the cartels, there was a big shift with the cartels. When I started my career, the cartels were drug trafficking organizations. As a matter of fact, we call them DTOs. DTO this, DTO that. But they started evolving. They went from these criminal organizations dealing in narcotics to all of a sudden becoming more politically involved in Mexico. They started getting involved in way other things more than drugs, and that's where the human beings came in. When the caravan started, the cartel said, "Wait a minute." The first caravans went through, and they're like, "No, you're not going to go through our territory without paying some kind of a piso, what they call it, right? The fee of the plaza."
The mordida.
The mordida. Well, it's not even a mordida. It's like they're going to just charge the illegals for.
It's the whole pie.
Just it's a fee for an extortion, basically fee for coming through their territory, and that was a big shift. Where now all of a sudden, these are not just drug dealers; these guys are dealing in human beings. Right now, they're big into the stealing of petroleum and oil. They have hands in a bunch of other stuff, and what's changed in Mexico also was that the cartels now shifted from the politician telling them what to do, even though they were all crooked. It's now shifted to where the cartels are running a parallel government over there. They own the politicians. They've placed the politicians in the positions that they want. They assassinated 30-some politicians last year in Mexico. Think about that.
Wow,
That's
incredible.
Some were candidates. Some were candidates, and some were already in office. And they also, Mexico is the most dangerous country for media personnel, for any kind of journalist. They've killed the most than any other country in the world. Those journalists that want to tell the truth, because one thing the cartel doesn't like is when the media actually tells the general public who they are and what they do.
Yes.
They like to put out their videos, these grotesque videos. I'm sure you've seen some of these. I don't want to watch them anymore, of them killing people alive, sacrificing horrific things. But they put those out for intimidation factors.
yes.
So now all of a sudden you're thinking, well, what are these people? Well, they're terrorists.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been advocating for them to be designated as such for a long time, and they finally were officially by the Trump administration and the State Department, which is the official entity of where these organizations are designated. And the State Department put them right next to ISIS, right next to the Taliban. And it's very hard for us because we've been, dealing with the cartels all our lives. We know if anybody lives in the border, we know. Well, now they're terrorists, and for some reason, people don't want to believe that. Oh no, the Sinaloa cartel is not a terrorist organization. Yes, they are. And so is Cartel Jalisco New Generation, and so are the 9 others that they put on that list.
And they'll keep
and
popping up.
That changes what happens here in the U.S.
Yeah, you know what?
So the movement of the people is incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad that you touched on the cartels because just the other day, the last few days, I've been seeing the paleteros and the taco stands that are out there. In the cities. Now what I'm hearing, and you tell me if this is true or not, is that a lot of these individuals that are out there selling the paletas or the corn, whatever, they've actually been human trafficked by the cartels, and they're forced to be out there in these corners selling these whether it be the elotes or the paletas, whatever, because that's the way of paying their debt back. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah. So what you're describing to me is another thing that evolved with the cartel. So these last several years, a legal person, and let's not pick Mexico because that's easier. But let's say someone from Central America, they want to pay, and they say, okay, it's $8,500 for you to come, and we'll get you into the U.S. Well, they didn't care that you were walking up to Border Patrol. They didn't care if you were jumping the fence or getting smuggled. You were going to pay the fee no matter what. But here's the thing. A lot of these people say, well, I only have $2,000. The cartel saying, that's okay. We'll take the $2,000. You owe us the balance. But when you get to Minneapolis or when you get to North Carolina, you work for us, and we're going to tell you what to do to pay off your debt. That's an indentured servitude. That is a form of forced labor trafficking. Now, the women, most of them, into the sex slave trade. The guys in construction and wherever they can find a job, sometimes they have to pay back $1,000 a month. And if they don't pay on time, they have to pay a $300 penalty with interest.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now the cartel owns all of these people all over the country.
Yep.
So whatever they tell them, you are going to enroll. You're a 22-year-old kid. You're going to enroll yourself in a local community college. and you're going to sell fentanyl pills at that college, and that's how you're going to pay us
crazy.
back.
It's crazy, and I wanted to share this.
So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I wanted to share this story with you. When I was still in the Democratic Party running for Congress in 2016, I spoke at an immigration forum, and and I was kind of like on the fence, right? Because I didn't know enough at that particular time. And then this father from Guatemala comes over to me, and he says after the meeting, he says, "Benito, can I talk to you?" So I said, "Sure." So he tells me a story. He goes, "I come from Guatemala." He says, "I paid $5,000 for each of my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old daughter, his wife, and himself. They came over. When they got to Tijuana," he said, "they were separated into different vans. The men were put in one van, the women and children in another van. Then they took them to a house. They gave them a backpack that was filled with drugs, and they told them, once you get this across the border, you call this number. When you call this number, you'll get your family back." Now, this is a father. He had no choice but to do this. He smuggled them across the border. He called that number, and he said he's never seen his family again. Do you hear that story often?
That story is even when I worked, the cartel was doing that. There, especially with the unaccompanied minors. Believe it or not, the majority, almost all the cases that I worked, because I'm a subject matter expert in human trafficking investigations. I did a lot of human trafficking investigations on the border and in Mexico, where they would literally bring the victim to be trafficked in the U.S., mostly for sex slave trade, but also for forced labor cases. But that, what you just described, is very, very familiar. They happen all the time, because they would take the child, they would recycle this child just to accompany whatever they wanted. And the Biden administration, along with Mexico, there's a lot of blame here to throw around to plenty of people, but one of those countries is Mexico, because Mexico would encounter these people. Once that separation would happen, Mexico would then say, okay, there's these 7 adults with 1 child. None of them are next of kin to this child. Oh, we're all with the child. And then Mexico said, okay, well, you're a family. We're Mexico. We're not going to celebrate you. We're not going to, separate you. Mm-hmm. So you're all going to go to DIF. And if you guys are familiar with DIF, DIF is like the Mexican CPS in Mexico. And so they would go over there to this facility, the DIF facility, and then, of course, that's not a detention or anything, and they would leave. And then you would see the child show up again with another group of 7 adults. And they did that over and over and over, thinking that, we're humanitarian. But what you were doing is you were trafficking the child. They would never see the child again, because the child was trafficked into the U.S. and transported by NGOs that you and I paid for, by the way.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I myself witnessed it many times. I flew with them on airplanes with children with an adult male that was not their father, taking them to Florida, taking them to North Carolina. Where is that child today? Yeah. No one was checking. No one was verifying the address. No one was corroborating the vetting of that sponsor. Wow. Yeah. So now you have 350,000 children. Over 100,000 of them have absolutely no clue where they're at. Yeah. They're starting to find some already. But that is the hardest thing right now.
Yeah, compassion, or I should say lawlessness, is not compassion. Exactly. Because when we think about what you're telling us, these statistics, 10,000, like tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors possibly being sex trafficked, what we hear from whistleblowers, the fentanyl crisis, all of it speaks to what lawlessness actually does in our country.
So, Victor, we're about to go to a break. Can you hold on, because we still have, at least hopefully another 20 minutes with you, and we can talk about when we first met in Washington, D.C., Tom Homan and his video Death Valley, River of Broken Dreams?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Stay with us, everybody. We have another half an hour coming up. We're speaking to Victor Avila. He has a book called Agent Under Fire. So look up that book, purchase that book, and learn a little bit about Victor. We'll be right back.
It's the final weekend before 4th of July. This is Larry Marino, reminding you that Troopathon is hard at work sending those care packs to our troops overseas who are all but forgotten. But sadly, if we don't help out, care packs won't go and our soldiers won't receive them. This is an urgent call to get all the care packs going at the last minute here, and we need your help. Donate $50, $100, $250, $500, $1,000, the Jen and Grant pack for $5,000, and the Larry Elder pack for $10,000. Whatever you give, do it now. Let's not forget our soldiers. And when you call in or give online, dictate a greeting. Long after the soldiers receive those care packs and enjoy them, they'll have that note as a reminder that you took the time to remember their sacrifice. We must hear from you now. Call 833, the number 2, and the word troops. 833-287-6677, or give online at am870.info. am870.info. You know, our soldiers sacrifice so much. We know they're in harm's way. We must remember their sacrifice by sending care packs, and on this final weekend before the 4th, we need to do it now. Please wait no longer. Call and help out. We must hear from you. Again, the care packs are ready to go. Don't forget the Larry Elder Pack. For a $10,000 donation, you get to have lunch with Larry and sit in studio and hear an hour of his show in person. The Jen and Grant Pack, a $5,000 donation. You get to sit in studio, hear an hour of the morning answer, and then have breakfast with Jen and Grant. Give whatever you can. If you donate $250, you'll receive a $50 food certificate from either Gulliver's or Columbo's as a thank you while they last. But do it now. This weekend, send care packs to our troops through Troopathon. 833, the number 2, and the word troops. 833, the number 2, and the word troops, or online at am870.info.
The Answer. Breaking news.
The California Air Resources Board is trying to debunk gas price conspiracy theories. Recently, lawmakers have been saying gas prices in California may be jumping 65 cents on July 1st. CARB says that's not true. They say the newly implemented low-carbon fuel standard, coupled with the voter-approved gas tax, may kick the prices up around a dime per gallon for regular. CARB also says the claims of $8 of gas next year are false. Larry Marino in the Answer Newsroom.
AM 870. The Answer. Mistrust, division. It's not what we're moving towards.
David Hernandez from the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club Show. You are listening to AM 870, The Answer.
Mike's alive.
And we are back. We are back with Victor Avila. We are talking about the border, everything that is happening, trying to have a better understanding. We met Victor Avila when we went to Washington, D.C. about 2 years ago. We were invited by our friend Ceci Truman and Sonia Murphy. And so we were able to go in and meet Tom Homan. We got to see his movie of a river of...
It's called, I believe it's Death Valley River of Broken Dreams, and that's where we had a lot of great insight. And that's what really we were able to, he allowed us to share that video at a certain time. We were able to share it with a lot of prominent leaders and really wake people up. And actually, Victor, that's what got me to run for Congress again, because when I saw that video, one of the greatest concerns I had, and I believe this is what you're going to lead into, is they had a question and answer after, and I raised my hand because, Tom was like, what is it that you noticed? What I noticed was that we had a lot of very physically fit men between the ages of 18 and probably 28 that were just in line crossing this border time after time. They looked like trained militants. You want to touch on that a little bit, Victor?
Absolutely. You don't know how many times, the last 4 years I was at the border, a lot in Eagle Pass, because that was one of the hot spots, if you guys remember, El Paso. It started in McAllen and then moved to Del Rio, all that area. And we saw these. We would see these guys, especially the Venezuelans. They would stand there. They were already crossed. They would bring them over. They put them in, form them in lines. And my partners and I would be there and we'd be like, man, look at this guy. Either he's, the way he's standing in line with his clothes and whatever right in front of him, very neatly packed, was either institutionalized from a prison or was a soldier. One or the other. Sometimes both. Yes. And sometimes they would admit to me. I would go up and ask them, where are we coming from? Venezuela. I always asked the question when they said Venezuela. I said, yeah, you're Venezuelan, but what country are you actually coming from? Oh, okay, well, I'm coming from Colombia. Oh, I'm coming from Peru. Oh, I'm coming from Nicaragua. They're coming from the surrounding countries. A lot of them, most of them, towards the end, then they were coming directly from Venezuela. But I would ask them, hey, have you ever been in jail or prison? They would always deny that. But they would not deny that they had military service. If you had military service, have you served in the military? And a lot of them would say yes. Yeah. And now you have these individuals, in our country because they were all let in. Remember the stats that you would see every month under the Biden administration: 150,000, 210,000 a month. I mean, those people, the majority, or almost not all of them, in that month were allowed in under illegally. One was the CBP-1 app, completely legal. The other was the parole provision that we have that exists. They shattered that. The same thing with the asylum claims. And I, as a person that worked this and enforced these laws, couldn't understand how they were getting away with it, saying, here's a parole. We're going to give you a humanitarian parole to enter the country. You can't do that. You just couldn't do that. I issued paroles as a special agent. Few people have the authority to issue paroles. As a matter of fact, Border Patrol does not have the authority to issue a parole. It would have to be a CBP officer at a port of entry or an ICE special agent to give you that. And it's very hard to get that approved. It has to be, there's a public benefit parole, there's a law enforcement parole, and of course a humanitarian parole. And they were just using that system to give them these permits with a work permit, by the way, to come into the country. I don't know if you just heard this past week. They've all been revoked. The CBP-1 app that came into everyone that came in through CBP-1 app no longer has a status. The same thing with those that came in with parole, and they also just lifted the temporary protective status of the Haitians that came in. I knew that was going to happen. I said it a lot in the last year. These people one day are going to find themselves with absolutely no status. But I do say this: it's not entirely their fault. Mm-hmm. And follow me here when I tell you this, because I would tell you, if you ask me if I'm from Nicaragua, I'm from Guatemala, I'm from somewhere from China. Let's talk China, Africa, India, and Europe, and the rest of the world. And I know that the Biden administration is doing that. Heck, I'm doing the same thing. They have an open door policy. I'm going to the best country in the world. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame people for doing that. What the problem here is that amongst those good people were bad people, a lot of bad people. And like they say in Spanish, por uno la llevan todos. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where we find ourselves today, that there are people that came into this country with no criminal history, but then committed crimes in the U.S. There's some that had criminal history that we didn't know because we don't have databases to check with their country, but they seemed clean when they put their fingerprints down. Okay, we took their picture, we got their fingerprints, and in the country you go, and then they murdered someone. Wow. Laken Riley is a perfect example. As a matter of fact, there's too many examples. I was come home a couple of months ago in D.C., and met with a bunch of, as a matter of fact, Laken Riley's parents were there, and her sister, and many other angel families that were killed at the hands of an illegal alien or a fentanyl poisoning. And let me tell you, there's just too many of those victims in this country. So I always tell the left when they say, no, not every illegal alien commits crimes. I know that. But one crime is one too many, whether it's a DUI, a theft, a murder, a rape, it's just too many. We have enough of that in our own country. And so when I see these protests and everybody going against ICE, it really is mind-boggling to me because they're only enforcing the law that everybody else would be enforcing, any police department. And I give this example. Imagine if the mayor of Los Angeles would tell the chief of police to no longer arrest anybody for DUI or DWI.
That's probably coming.
Pull them over and identify them as drunk, but then you have to let them go. Well, something bad's going to happen eventually, right?
That's exactly right. You know what? Something to think about. You're talking about maybe about 20 million people. Let's say 20 million, but they say that it's probably more than that because that's probably the highest they kind of really document it. So, but let's go with the 20 million. If you take only 1% of 20 million that are, committing crimes, 1% is 200,000 people that are committing crimes. That's only 1%. 1% out of 20 million, and you're talking about 200,000 people committing crimes. That's a lot. So when you look at it in numbers like that, it has a different perspective. I have a couple more questions. Victor, when you worked for, previous administrations, did you guys wear head covers when you went in? Did you guys, protect your identity? Because I know a lot of the chat is, oh, look at them. They, if they're doing the right things, they wouldn't be wearing a head cover. Did you guys wear head covers back then?
No, because the threat wasn't there from the public.
Exactly.
the doxing wasn't there, the exposure of the ICE agent didn't exist. I'll tell you that I covered my face one time. I arrested and took down a corrupt Border Patrol agent, and there was a lot of media. And when you did the perp walk, I got my face cover and I covered it. I have the picture of it that came out in the paper. Why did I cover my face? Well, the organization that I took down in Mexico and the Border Patrol agents organization in the U.S. is too close.
Right,
too close
exactly.
for comfort.
I mean,
and so I covered my
right.
face for my protection.
Well, it
And
makes
so now,
yeah.
what you're seeing is ICE agents are having to cover it all the time now on
Yes.
any kind of law enforcement activity because they're putting out their phone numbers, their addresses,
Yeah, they are.
Yes.
the car that they were driving, and doxing them, and that's very, very dangerous.
It is very dangerous, and it is so wrong because, like I said, all of us at one point or another, we either have friends or family and somewhere in some type of law enforcement, whether it's ICE, whether it's just whatever, being a, police officer, it is just so wrong that they are doing this to so many people. This is their job. This is what what they're supposed to be doing. And to go and put them and their families and lives in danger is just so, so wrong. And they should themselves also be in jail.
The police have been, I'll tell you real quick, the police have been arresting people for eternity, and they've never done this to police officers or sheriff's deputies. But because, again, it's an ICE agent and it's a hot political issue,
yes,
it's more than that now. It's almost, it takes a whole different meaning.
Well, too, and I think a lot of people don't understand is that there is millions, I would say billions of dollars behind all of this. This is like George Soros money. This is a U.S. Aid money that's been funneling to all these protests, all these anarchists that are pushing people's buttons to make them feel they have a place. And so you got these professional people going out to all these places, just revving people up to do these crazy things that they probably wouldn't normally otherwise do. And it's because of a lot of these sanctuary cities that are allowing this craziness to happen. I know we touched on the fact that I was watching a video of Holman talking about, they're saying, well, why are you going into schools and churches and picking up these illegals that are criminals? And his reaction is, look, we used to be able to go to the prisons or to the jails to pick up these people because ICE used to work with these facilities to pick up these criminals. Now these sanctuary cities and these governors and mayors are not allowing ICE to do things that they would normally do, that they did under Obama. So you wouldn't see this stuff happening under Obama. Now you see it happening because they hate Trump so much. The Trump derangement is so
TDS.
real. It's real. It's very real. And so before you would be able to go into a prison or a jail, and ICE used to work with the jailers or the police station and be able to pick up these criminals. Well, the sanctuary mayors and the governors are putting all of us in danger. We're all in grave dangers because of these Democratic Newsom and Mayor, because they are not allowing ICE to pick up these criminals from prisons and jails like they used to be. So these are the people we must stop electing because they are putting our children and all of us in danger. So I wanted to throw that out there. The other thing I wanted to
100%.
yeah,
100% correct.
Yes.
I just want to say you're 100% correct on that.
Yes, great. Thank you for that. Because you know what? One other thing I have a question on. When somebody is getting arrested, now, does ICE have to have a warrant? How does this work? If somebody's going to, I know with the criminal, if you're going to go into they were talking about, there was a target here in Pacoima. This was our area. And so they were saying ICE went in there, got somebody specifically. Does ICE need a warrant to get somebody and apprehend them? How does that work?
Thank you for asking that. Absolutely not. There's no warrant needed. I hear these people shouting, "Let me see your judicial warrant." The elected official somewhere up there in New York. Let me see your judicial warrant protecting the illegal alien. I arrested 99.9% of my arrests were warrantless, without a warrant. And this is the part that people don't understand. All they have to do is do a little bit of research of who HSI is and who ICE officers are, deportation officers, and what authority they have. they do not need a warrant to arrest an illegal alien. Can I question a U.S. citizen? Absolutely. I could talk as an agent. I could talk whoever I want for whatever reason I want. There's all these limitations all of a sudden started popping up. Well, they can't talk to the U.S. citizen. Yes, I can. You know how many times I talked to U.S. citizens to obtain information? I was a criminal investigator. I was investigating drugs. I was investigating money laundering. I was investigating human trafficking. I was investigating counterterrorism. I was investigating so many things. I had to talk to U.S. citizens. That didn't mean that because I was attached to an immigration authority that I couldn't talk to them. Absolutely. If I encountered a group of 10 individuals, and I didn't know who was legal and illegal, I detain all of them, and I question every single one of them and conduct what we call an alienage of those people. Okay, you're a citizen. Thank you for coming. Next. You're illegal right away, because that's what we do. We question people. Now I'm hearing, oh, don't answer the door. You don't have to talk to them. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. What it's doing is putting the community more at risk when they go out there and give advance notice that they're coming, and now they're obstructing with the investigation that the agents are doing.
That's right.
You know, Victor, we have so much to talk about, and that's why I thought it was very important to bring you on the radio show a little over 2 months ago, because when I realized, being a former strategist and organizer for the Democratic Party, I realized that they were losing their audience. They were losing their voting base because they put all their cookies in the jar when it came to the woke agenda. When they realized they were losing that, I said, immigration is going to be the next issue. That's why we asked you to come on to prepare for what we're about to face, and we're facing it right now. So, I want to thank you for go ahead.
I have like 2 more questions.
No, we weren't done with him. No, I just said I want to thank you for all the work that you do in clarifying the fact that they don't need warrants, because right now that is the fear mongering that is going on. And I'll end with this so my wife can ask her questions, is that I had a relative, because people are saying they're separating families, they're going into homes, they're taking other people than just the individual they're after. I had a family relative who wanted to live with me and my family, and he had a warrant that was out for him, and I told him absolutely not. Because if I allow you to live here under my roof and police come in for you, guess what? Now I'm harboring a fugitive. I can also be in trouble. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. The same thing that's why you're seeing some of these elected officials get arrested, and even judges, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're aiding and abetting, and they're harboring. My goodness, I used to arrest people and charge them and put them in jail for exactly that. But nobody said it. Like you said earlier, nobody said anything. I arrested so many people for harboring, for transporting illegals, for doing all these things that are now being done wide open under a camera lens, and nothing is being done about it. I know the Trump administration is starting to crack down and starting arresting people,
yes, sir.
Especially the governors and mayors who give out the instruction, and all you're doing is not only obstructing justice, but harboring these illegals as well.
Yes, and I kind of wanted to just a little tip off what my husband said about the voting. When people are saying, why is this happening? Why? This is the Democrat voting base right now. If the Democrats cannot have these illegals here, they will lose representation because of the census, because the illegals are counted as people,
it's a body.
as regular people. And by how many people they're allotted representation. So this is all about voting. This is not about having a heart for these people. It's about taking advantage of these people. So I wanted to just kind of tip off a little bit.
I agree with you. Believe me, we were exploring this years ago. Like, why are they doing it? The votes, but I think ultimately it is the representation. It's also, I think, fundamentally changing the fabric of our country.
Oh,
because everything that we're talking about right here, it has nothing to do with legal immigration. We want people to come to this country, good people, and to contribute to the community and assimilate themselves to our country. We want that. My parents did that. I'm proud of that. I'm a product of that legal immigration. This has nothing to do with that.
Absolutely.
The left mixes both. They call everybody an immigrant, and that's not true. There's illegal people here that are circumventing the system, and they're not coming here because they want to be Americans, especially people like Pedro de Aragua and others. They're coming here to destroy communities and commit crime. Yeah. We can't allow that. Now, what is different, and I'll say it now because people are saying, why are people getting arrested that do not have criminal histories? Because all those restrictions under the Obama and Biden administrations that I talked about no longer exist. You can go pick up someone at a courthouse now. As a matter of fact, you're seeing it happen a lot. Those safe havens no longer exist because
Yes.
they never really should have existed in the first place. And so if an ICE officer goes after a target and that target is hanging out with 5 other illegals that do not have other criminal histories, there's no discretion. They're going to have to go. They're going to have to go, and even if they have no criminal history. And that's probably the biggest difference that people don't understand.
Yes.
Listen, you're still here illegally. That's why they're offering these programs to go back on your own. They'll give you some money and come back and do it the right way so you can have that opportunity to do it and come out of the shadows and don't be afraid, whether you've been here 10, 15 years, 20 years, or you just came in, 2 years ago or yesterday. By the way, people are still coming in. I want you to know, I was just in Arizona. People are still being smuggled like crazy into this country.
I don't know if that's ever. Yeah.
Meth and cocaine are making a huge comeback.
That's just crazy.
Into this country. I want, even though the border is as secure that I've ever seen it and anyone has ever seen it, that's good. But I want people to know that they're still coming in.
Yeah.
One other question, Victor, I know we don't have a lot of time left, and I want to finish this off, I think, to the end with you, because it's just so many questions here. People are talking about how these criminals that were being deported, how Trump sent these criminals to different countries other than their own countries. I think one of the big reasons people don't understand why Trump did that is because a lot of their countries, like Venezuela, would not accept their criminals back there. They basically emptied their prisons and they came over here. Trump got them and had them sent back, was trying to have them sent back to their countries, but a lot of the countries were not taking them in. So he made a deal with El Salvador's president to put these illegal criminals into these El Salvador's president or prison, I should say. Do you know, are they applying that at all to just regular, just illegals, or is this just criminal illegals that they're doing this with, where they're sending them to other countries other than their own country?
These are just the criminal illegal aliens that are not being accepted from the countries of their origin, which makes absolutely no sense. It's their people. Remember the guy from Maryland, the father from Maryland,
Right?
Garcia. Garcia Obrego, I think is his name. He's back and forth. He's back in the U.S. He's facing, human smuggling charges, and that's why they belong in a certain place. But really, I said this many years ago. The burden doesn't belong to the United States. It shouldn't. The burden should belong to their countries, their citizens. We should give them back to them, and they decide what they want. They want to put them in prison. They want to let them go free in the streets. It's up to them. It's their country. But why we the United States allowed the burden to fall on our shoulders, and all of a sudden we're responsible and we're the bad guy because we're sending people back to their home.
Yeah.
And so now they made this deal with these third countries to accept these people because, again, a lot of them, especially from Venezuela, were not coming from the origin of country of where they were born. They were coming from other places. Remember the Haitians that came to Del Rio several years ago? Most of them had not been in Haiti for years. They were all in Central America and in Mexico. They all spoke Spanish. And they weren't coming directly from Haiti. They had already been established, even had families in these other countries. And that's why. And let's not forget the terrorism angle here and why this is so important. Under the Biden administration, we don't know. We caught a bunch of them, hundreds of them that we know. How many did we not on those gotaways that are terrorists and are now here in this country as a sleeper cell planning to do something against us? They're here. Please don't have a doubt in your mind that these people exist in this country and are waiting. They're waiting for Iran to give the green light. As a matter of fact, some of these proxies are not following what Iran wants to do in the ceasefire. They're so extremist that they'll do whatever they want. That's the real challenge. And so with everything that we talked about, throw in the terrorism, and then that should really alert all of us. That should not be a partisan issue whatsoever. That affects every single
Victor,
American.
I'm glad you're...
And to me, it's about public safety.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about that because, at the beginning of the interview, I said the Democrats are really good at pulling at our heartstrings. But I think you have a very special perspective, and I want to talk about that. You survived a brutal ambush by the Los Zetas, right, cartel, while serving
Yes.
in this country, and you've seen how dangerous organized criminal networks truly are. But let's fast forward to today. We're watching LA erupt in riots with protesters defending criminals, ICE officers being obstructed, and violent illegal aliens being shielded by sanctuary policies. As someone who's actually shed blood fighting cartels, what goes through your mind, right, as an agent who is trying to keep lawfulness in our country, right? When you see American cities protecting lawlessness and turning federal agents into enemies, what can we, how can we illustrate that? Because you
2
said
minutes.
you're someone with a background who comes from a family, second generation American, and you're trying to do your family proud.
Yeah, we got about a minute, Victor.
Good.
Well, that's a great point. I go through a lot of mixed emotions. I go through anger. I go through confusion. I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't think people really know what they're actually fighting for, believe it or not.
I agree.
think they want to fight for the rights of people that are in this country illegally. Well, there's a certain way to do that by encouraging them to come. There is a legal system, by the way.
Yes, sir.
It might be broken, and I'm the first one to tell you it's a crappy system, but that's what we have. And millions of people come into that country under that crappy system. And we're a very generous country that allows to do that because we want to give you the opportunity. U.S. wants to give you the opportunity to do that. But when you do the very first thing you do is break the law to come in here. For some reason, Telemundo, Univision, and all the left-wing media, they put that aside. And it angers me and because it's not about this country. Is when I say you assimilate to a country, one way you
1
assimilate
minute.
here is by following the law.
That's right.
And what we're seeing now is we're getting people from very different cultures. As a matter of fact, let's just talk Mexico. They're an encounter with a police officer in Mexico is very different than an encounter with a police officer here. Forget Central America and China and Africa and all these other countries
That's right.
where they are brought up to hate the police. I was brought up to respect the authority, respect my teacher, respect the person behind the counter, and respect my adults. So there's a bigger picture here, right, of the broken family, of all those values that we could probably talk hours and hours. But I think we have to really get into those conversations.
Yeah, Victor, you know what? I just want to say thank you so much for coming
What a
on.
great
I
ending.
would like you to come on again, sooner than later, because there's just so much more that we could be talking about right now. Now, Victor, again, your book is Agent Under Fire. Where can they get your book?
You could grab it on Amazon or go to agentunderfirebook.com.
Okay, Victor, thank you again. We
Gracias,
really
Victor.
appreciate it.
Dios te bendiga.
Yes.
God bless you and your family, my brother.
You too, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
See you in D.C. soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There you go. We're going to commercial. We'll be right back, so you guys stay with us. We got a lot more ahead.
Summer is all about making great memories. Boy, I love getting out on the boat. I admit that one of my little joys in life is to get on a boat and ride